Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about extracting kick drums from tracks that you like, so you can use them as a reference for the kick that you're working on, or just to sample them. So this subject has been covered in YouTube tutorials before, but I want to take a little bit of a deeper look into it and see if there's anything that we can improve upon the normal technique that you've probably already seen of using a multi-band compressor inside Ableton. There's a few things that we can improve that I already know, so I'm going to explain that in this video. Hey guys, I just wanted to quickly say if you want to support this channel, go to my Spotify or Apple Music. There you can follow me and add some of my songs to your daily listening playlist. Thank you very much. Let's get back into the video. So here we have the track. One thing to note is that this technique works better the less other stuff there is in the track. That should be pretty obvious, but the more isolated the kick is within the track, easier it is to get it out of the track and to actually extract it and to make sure that there's no other elements in there. So this is Live Frequency by Liquid Soul and Outsiders. It's a track that I really like and that I really know well. So I know that this section here, which I've selected and looped, has a pretty clean kick in there, although there's a little bit of a reverb tail that you can hear on top of it. So the normal technique is to use a multi-band compressor. Usually what is done is use the multi-band compressor in here, but I'm actually going to emulate that with Dynamics MB, because then we can also show you the other technique within the same plugin. This is the plugin. It's a basic multi-band compressor, and the idea is that we're going to isolate different frequencies of the kick, and because of the way a kick is synthesized with all of its high end at the start and its mid-range kind of being right there, and then you have the sub which covers all of this area. It means that allows you to isolate the different frequencies and also kind of combine them in time. So for example here, as you can see, we have a little bit of a high end coming from the bass, and that's also here and here. You can see those little spikes there. We're going to isolate them by not including the high end of this part of the track here. So the way we're going to do that is by recording them. And what you want to do is you want to solo the lowest band, and you want to kind of sweep down until you find the sweet spot of the sub. And then we do the same with the mid-range. And then finally with the high end, we just listen to see if that's okay. And there is no real proper way to set this. There's a lot of experimentation. I've done this before, obviously preparing for this tutorial, so I kind of know what the range is for success here. But just to start out, let's record this high end first. And for the high end, it's the easiest to see what you're kind of aiming for. So you can see we have some high end here of the bass line, but mainly the high end of the kick is just this stuff here. So that's all isolated. That's very easy to work with. The problem already starts to occur when you're looking at, for example, the mid-range. So let's record that. It seems to be better. That's it's not as big of a problem as I would have thought. But the sub, you can definitely see that there's a little bit of an issue. So let's record the sub. You can see the issue that we're having with the sub is that there's a bass note here which has some sub, which makes this part louder. But overall, we can see that we have pretty cleanly separated the different layers. So now what we can do is we can just set the parts to what we're interested in. So here we don't want this mid-range, so we'll just cut everything out before that. And here we don't want any of this sub, so we'll just again cut anything out before it. Now there's a few considerations to make. Here you can see there's a little bit of a fade over, and if we listen to this particular layer, you can hear that the reverb tail that I was talking about before, that you can hear, is pretty prominent in here. It's a bit noisy, and so we want to make it as clean as possible. So we're going to get this as far forward as possible, like this, and then we're just going to fade it in with this sub. So we get the least amount of that kind of noise extending here. And to fix that second thing, I'm actually going to zoom in a bit on the waveform so we can see the amplitude here. And the best way to do that is zoom out a bit here, so you can see kind of the amplitude curve of mainly this higher bit. I'm just going to slightly round that out like this. And obviously if your fade isn't working, you can also use a utility, and then you can set up a little bit more of a complex curve on top of it with a volume automation. But now we should have a pretty decent sounding kick. You can still hear the smallest trace of reverb tail though, and there's also another problem. So usually with this multiband dynamics here, another reason why you should use it is because its crossover filters aren't the best in terms of quality. And the main issue is that you cannot set them to linear phase. I was actually going away with linear phase in crossover bands because of the Psytrance baseline kind of idea, and what they're not using linear phase actually has better results than using linear phase. But for this particular technique, linear phase is desired because we don't care about any of the pre-ringing. If you recall, linear phase introduces pre-ringing, which can mess with the transient, but because we cut everything away at the start, there's no information here. We're basically left with all of the benefits of linear phase without having any of the pre-ringing. Another thing is that linear phase filters are very well designed for crossovers. Dan Worrell actually did a video on this, and if I recall, I will link this in the description so you can go and watch that as well. So now we can go back into our multiband and try to solve those problems. So I'm going to first set up linear phase and also 5 bands, so we have a little bit more of a resolution here, and we can just listen to it again. I'm thinking of setting the lowest band the same and then trying to get as much information in this area where that reverb tail is sitting. So we're going to listen to this first. And the second one. You can hear in this highest band there's no reverb, and in this lowest band there's no reverb, and even in this one there's very little. So that's kind of what we're after. We're trying to isolate the reverb block into as few bands as possible right here, and into as little frequency as possible, but still have a few bands that we can work with it. So now that we have everything recorded, you can see our 3 highest bands are basically very short, which if you remember, these 2 are the ones that hold that reverb tail, so we can really cut this as short as we want. So now let's just cut it up. Again, it's the same idea as before. So for the sub, it's that little fade that we want to add on top of it to dampen the volume a bit. Here we want to sit as close as possible to the start, so I'm just going to get this. And because we're using linear phase, this is all aligned right now. So you can see it's all the same, all aligned. And now here we can just cut this up right here. And again, this is just kind of going to fade between this band and this band. Here it's the same idea. We can go pretty close for it. I'm just going to leave a little bit of the gap here. And in here, because we have the hi-hat, it's a little bit longer. So we're just going to get that here. And now you'll hear that the kick that we have is a lot cleaner. The other thing that you can do is separate this even more. Because remember, the very high end, we have this hat, and then we have this transient, which is the very start of the kick. So we can basically isolate that, and we just duplicate them, do like this, and we'll just add a little bit of a fade between these. So transitions a little bit nicer. And now what you can do is you can mix these different elements together, and you can basically kind of EQ the different frequencies in them. Even though you're not really using an EQ, you can, for example, add a bit of lower mid-range and remove some of the higher mid-range, and this area here, you get a new different kick. You can add some more transient. Remove the hat a bit if you want. So now it's a very versatile kind of workflow that you have to really create unique kick sounds out of this sample. Finally, if you want to store this kick, you can just go to the group and record the kick. And now as you can see, you have a nice clean kick sample extracted from the track. So that's going to do it for this tutorial. For the next one, I want to actually kind of continue on this process and show you how I process kicks, what I've been learning over the last few months on processing kick drums in particular, and also with regards to a reference kick that you're now able to extract yourself. So if you're interested in that, subscribe for the next video and turn on the bell notifications to get notified by YouTube. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, so that way I know that you like this kind of stuff and I can keep making this kind of content. But for now, this is going to be it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.